Just Once by Thomas J. Dygard. Everybody likes the moose. To his father and mother he was Brian, as in Brian Jefferson Crawford. But to everyone at Bedford City High he was the moose. He was large and strong, as you might imagine from his nickname, and he was pretty fast on his feet, sort of nimble, you might say, considering his size. He didn't have a pretty face, but he had a quick and easy smile. Sweet, some of the teachers called it. Nice, others said. But on the football field the moose was neither sweet nor nice. He was just strong and fast and a little bit devastating as the left tackle of the Bedford City Bears. When the moose blocked somebody, he stayed blocked. When the moose was called on to open up a hole in the line for one of the Bedford Bears runners, the hole more often than not resembled an open garage door. Now, in his senior season, the moose had twice been named to All-Conference and was considered a cinch for All-State. He spent a lot of his spare time when he wasn't in the classroom or on the football field reading letters from colleges eager to have the moose pursue higher education and football at their institution. But the moose had a hang-up. He didn't go public with his hang-up until the sixth game of the season. But looking back, most of his teammates agreed that probably the moose had been nurturing the hang-up secretly for 2 years or more. The moose wanted to carry the ball. For sure the moose was not the first interior lineman in the history of football or even the history of the Bedford City High who banged heads up front and wore bruises like badges of honor and dreamt of racing the ball down the field to the end zone while everybody in the bleachers screamed his name. But most linemen, it seems, are able to stifle the urge. The idea may pop into their minds from time to time, but in their hearts they know they can't run fast enough. They know that they can't do the fancy dancing to elude tacklers, and they aren't trained to read blocks. They know that their strengths and talents are best utilized in the line. Football is, after all, a team sport, and everyone plays the position where he most helps the team. And so these linemen, or most of them, go back to banging heads without saying the first word about the dream that flickered through their minds. Not so with the moose. That sixth game, when the moose's hang-up first came into public view, had ended with the moose truly in all of his glory as the Bears' left tackle. Yes, glory, but uncheered, sort of, and anonymous. The Bears were trailing 21-17 and had the ball on the Mitchell's high 5-yard line. Fourth down with time running out. The rule in such a situation is simple. The best back carries the ball behind the best blocker, and it is a rule seldom violated by those in control of their faculties. The Bears, of course, followed that rule. That meant Jerry Dixon running behind the Moose's blocking. With the snap of the ball, the Moose knocked down one lineman, bumped into another one aside, and charged forward to flatten an approaching linebacker. Jerry did a little jog behind the Moose and then ran into the end zone, virtually untouched, to win the game. After circling the end zone a moment while the cheers echoed through the night, Jerry did run across and hug the Moose. That's true. Jerry knew who had made the touchdown possible. But it wasn't the Moose's name that everybody was shouting. The fans in the bleachers were cheering Jerry Dixon. It was probably at that precise moment that the Moose decided to go public. In the dressing room, Coach Buford Williams was making his rounds among the cheering players and came to a halt in front of the Moose. It was your great tackling. It was your great blocking that did it, he said. I want to carry the ball, the Moose said. Coach Williams was already taking turns and turning away and taking a step toward the next player due an accolade when his brain registered the fact that the Moose had said something strange. He was expecting the Moose to say, "Aw, gee, thanks, Coach." That was what the Moose always said when the coach issued a compliment, but the Moose had said something else. The coach turned back to the Moose and looked in disbelief on his face. "What did you say?" "I want to carry the ball." Coach Williams was good at quick recoveries, as any high school football coach had better be. He gave a tolerant smile and a little nod and said, "You keep right on blocking, son." This time Coach Williams made good on his turn and moved away from the Moose. The following week's practice and the next Friday's game passed without further incidents. After all, the game was a road game over at Cartwright High 35 miles away. The Moose wanted to carry the ball in front of the Bedford City fans. Then the Moose went to work. He caught up with the coach on the way to the practice field on Wednesday. "Remember," he said, leaning forward and down a little to get his face in the coach's face, "I said I want to carry the ball." Coach Williams must have been thinking about something else because it took him a minute to look up into the Moose's face, and even then he didn't say anything. "I meant it," the Moose said. "Meant what?" "I want to run the ball." "Oh," Coach Williams said. Yes, he remembered. "Son, you're a great left tackle and a great blocker. Let's leave it that way." The Moose let the remaining days of practice week and then the game on Friday night against Edgewood High pass while he reviewed strategies. The review led him to Dan Blevins, the Bears quarterback. If the signal caller would join in, maybe Coach Williams would listen. "Yeah, I heard," Dan said. "But look, what about Joe Wright at guard and Bill Slocum at right tackle, even Herbie Watson at center? They might all want to carry the ball. What are we going to do, take turns? It doesn't work that way." So much for Dan Blevins. The Moose found that most of the players in the backfield agreed with Dan. They couldn't see any reason why the Moose should carry the ball, especially in place of themselves. Even Jerry Dixon, who owed a lot of his glory to the Moose's blocking, gaped in disbelief as the Moose's idea. The Moose, however, got some support from his fellow linemen. Maybe they had a dream of their own and saw the value in precedent. As the days went by, a word spread, not only on the practice field and in the corridors of Bedford City High, but all around town. The players by now were openly taking sides. Some thought it was a jolly good idea that the Moose carry the ball. Others, like Dan Blevins, held to his purist line. A left tackle plays left tackle, and a ball carrier carries the ball, and that's it. All around town, the votes weren't even close. Everybody wanted the Moose to carry the ball. "Look, son," Coach Williams said to the Moose on the practice field the Thursday before the Benton High game. "This was gone far enough. Fun is fun and a joke is a joke, but let's drop it." "Just once," the Moose pleaded. Coach Williams looked at the Moose and didn't answer. The Moose didn't know what that meant. The Benton Heights Tigers were duck soup for the Bears, as everyone knew they would be. The Bears scored in their first 3 possessions and led 28-0 at half. The hapless Tigers had yet to cross the 50-yard line under their steam. All the Bears, of course, were enjoying the way the game was going, as were the Bedford City fans jamming the bleachers. Coach Williams looked irritated when the crowd on a couple of occasions broke out in a chant. "Give the Moose the ball! Give the Moose the ball!" On the field, the Moose didn't know whether to grin at hearing his name shouted by the crowd or to frown because the sound of his name was irritating the coach. Was the crowd going to talk Coach Williams into putting the Moose into the backfield? Probably not. Coach Williams didn't bow to that kind of pressure. Was the coach going to refuse to give the ball to the Moose just to show the crowd and the Moose and the rest of the players who was boss? The Moose feared so. In his time on the sideline when the defensive unit was on the field, the Moose, of course, said nothing to Coach Williams. He knew better than to break the coach's concentration during the game, even a runaway victory, with a comment on any subject at all, much less his desire to carry the ball. As a matter of fact, the Moose was careful to stay out of the coach's line of vision, especially when the crowd was chanting, "Give the Moose the ball." By the end of the third quarter, the Bears were leading 42-0. Coach Williams had been feeding the substitutes in the game since halftime. But the Bears kept marching on, and now in the opening minutes of the fourth quarter, the Moose and his teammates were standing on the Tigers' 5-yard line, about to pile on another touchdown. The Moose saw his substitute, Larry Hendon, getting a slap on the behind and then running onto the field. The Moose turned to leave. Then he heard Larry tell the referee, "Hendon for Holbrook." Holbrook? Chad Holbrook was a fullback. Chad gave the coach a funny look and jogged off the field. Larry joined the huddle and said, "Coach says the Moose at fullback and give him the ball." Dan Blevins said, "Really?" "Really." The Moose was giving his grin. Sweet, some of the teachers called it. Nice, others said. "I want to do an end run," the Moose said. Dan looked at the sky a moment. Then he said, "What does it matter?" The quarterback took the snap from the center, moved back to his right while turning, and extended the ball to the Moose. The Moose took the ball and cradled it in his right hand. So far so good, he hadn't fumbled. Probably both Coach Williams and Dan were surprised. He ran a couple of steps and looked out in front of him and said aloud, "Whoa!" Where had all those tacklers come from? The whole world seemed to be peopled with players in red jerseys, the red of the Benton Heights Tigers. They were all looking straight at the Moose and advancing towards him. They looked very determined and not friendly at all. And there were so many of them. The Moose had faced the guys in a line, but usually one at a time or maybe two. But this, 5 or 6, and all of them were heading for him. The Moose screeched to a halt, whirled, and ran the other way. Dan Blevins blocked somebody in a red jersey breaking through the middle of the line, and the Moose wanted to stop running and thank him, but he kept running. His reverse had caught the Tigers' defenders going the wrong way, and the field in front of the Moose looked open. But his blockers were going the wrong way too. Maybe that was why the field looked so open. What did it matter, though? With the field clear in front of him, this was going to be a cakewalk. The Moose was going to score a touchdown. Then again, whoa! Players in red jerseys were beginning to feel the empty space, a lot of them, and they were all running toward the Moose. They were kind of low, with their arms spread, as if they wanted to hit him hard and then grab him. A picture of Jerry Dixon dancing his little jig and wriggling between tacklers flashed through the Moose's mind. How did Jerry do that? Well, no time to ponder that one now. The Moose lowered his shoulder and thundered ahead into the cloud of red jerseys. Something hit his left thigh. It hurt. Then something pounded his hip and then his shoulder. They both hurt. Somebody was hanging on to him and was a terrible drag. How could he run with somebody hanging on him? He knew he was going down. But maybe he was across the goal. He hit the ground hard with somebody coming down on top of him, right on the small of his back. The Moose couldn't move. They had him pinned. Wasn't the referee supposed to get these guys off? Finally, the load was gone, and the Moose, still holding the ball, got to his knees and one hand and then stood. He heard the screaming of the crowd and saw the scoreboard blinking. He had scored. His teammates were slapping him on the shoulder pads and laughing and shouting. The Moose grinned, but he had a strange and distant look in his eyes. He jogged to the sideline, the roars of the crowd still ringing his ears. "Okay, son?" Coach Williams asked. The Moose was puffing. He took a couple of deep breaths. He relived for a moment the first sight of the half-dozen players in red jerseys, all with one target, him. He saw again the menacing horde of red jerseys that had risen up just when he thought that he had a clear sailing to the goal. They all zeroed in on him. The Moose alone. The Moose glanced at the coach, took another deep breath, and said, "Never again."